What's up, model makers? It's time for yet another episode in the bare metal adventure. I never thought that this project was going to go to 6 and more episodes, but hey, it is what it is. And if you like the drama and you like seeing me struggle, this is the one to watch. Let's check it out. So this morning is one of those kind of mornings where you walk into your shop and you just know that there are things you're going to have to deal with right off the bat, and it's almost kind of liberating because you don't want to do it, but you've just accepted that you got to do it, and so you just get after it and start getting shit done. The first thing that I wanted to check out was what can I do with decals directly on the surface of all-clad chrome. And so I kind of have already started a little experiment here where I just directly applied a little dollop of microsol straight onto it, and you can see that this is the freshly applied, or whatever. I applied it last night. So you can see that this is the unprotected all-clad chrome. Anyway, you can see that microsol most definitely affects it. So you're not going to get away with that. But the question is, can you apply a decal and just very carefully put microsol only on the decal? And that's generally what I try to do anyway. I use a very small brush to apply microsol. And so that's what I've done here with this little decal that I'm not going to use. And I just did it a few minutes ago, so microsol hasn't had time to do its thing. But it doesn't really matter because what I'm talking about are just the stencils, and none of them are going to go off or across panel lines or anything like that anyway. So I may not even need to use any microsol given that I'm going to cover it with aqua gloss. As long as I don't have any silvering, and that's real easy to spot on a surface like this. So I'm going to let this little experiment percolate while I deal with the real annoying issue. One of the things that I'm definitely learning with this project is just how finicky this type of finish is with respect to any sort of flaw. I think I showed you on the last clip that I had to do a little work on the nose and that I had to polish that out, and that the paint really took that polish, and it did. Worked really well. I'm real happy with the way that looks. And the thing is, I did not polish or sand through the paint. If you remember, I had a couple of areas where I did do that, and I chose to just leave it because I thought, well, it's polished smooth. I've looked at it through my optivisor. It's all good. And as long as it's glossy smooth, then everything will be fine. Well, yeah, but the problem is when you don't see everything. And you can see right here what I'm talking about. I still have witnesses from my seam line across the fuselage spine there. And I just was not able to see that before. So I shouldn't have been lazy. I should have painted over it and should have sanded and polished the paint, because now that's what I'm going to have to do. Fortunately, this is easy as repairs go, because I can just rub that paint off of there with my finger and carry on. You can also see I have a little bit of a witness left from installing that little vent panel, and I'm going to take the opportunity to fix that as well. So that's just going to be a little bit of surgical repair work. You can really see the issue that I'm talking about here on the bottom, where again, I thought, hey, that is nice and smooth. And even that microscopically thin edge of paint there shows. Now for this one, I'm going to leave it because it looks almost kind of natural, and after I put a gloss on it and do some weathering there and so forth, it'll blend in fine, so no big deal. Now here's a good example of the difference between spraying this all-clad chrome onto a gloss surface versus a flat surface, and that's all around the canopy frame. The canopy frame was just primed with regular old Mr. Surfacer 1500, and you can see how much duller looking it is. I also sprayed that primer with it installed, and I purposefully did not mask it off and allowed that primer overspray around the perimeter of the canopy, because I want that area to look kind of mottled and dull as it would just from rubbing and scuffing and wear and tear like I'm trying to portray. So I feel okay about that. I'm not just 100% happy with the way that the canopy frame turned out, but I don't know how it could have gotten much better. You can see my filler there where I attempted to blend that in, and again, not great, but I don't know how I could have done much better. And to me, that's a defect that is preferable to just having a big step right there, because it's really supposed to be blended seamless. If you look at reference pictures, you'll see what I'm saying. This would have been a great candidate for what some newer kits feature, which is this entire section. Like if you went around this panel line right here that comes down below the windscreen and made all of that the clear piece. That way you have no body work to do around the very edges of the canopy, only out here around this panel line where you can fill and rescribe if need be. But that's a difficult thing to modify the tool for. What Hasegawa could do to make this kit a little bit better, that would be what's called a steel safe modification, is they could deepen the canopy frames. They barely stick out at all, and the only saving grace is that the Eduard masks in this case fit perfectly. It's no secret that Eduard masks can be a little bit hit or miss on sizing, but they are dead nuts for this one, and it's a good thing because those canopy frames just don't stick up hardly at all. And what I mean by steel safe modification is that's what tool makers talk about. I mean when they talk about a modification that requires removing material from a mold. So just imagine, in order to make that canopy frame stick up a little further, you need a little deeper pocket in the mold to make that happen, and that's that's removing tool steel, which is much easier and cheaper to do on a finished mold than if you have to add material to modify the tool. So anyway, that's something that I think Hasegawa could do that would improve the kit and just give it that last little bit of fit and finish that would make things a little bit easier on us as model makers. But still, it's 20 years old, and it holds up pretty well against some newer stuff that I've seen, for sure. Okay, dudes, so I thought I would just show you this so you can see just how stupid things can get sometimes. I made a mistake, and I should have known better. When my plan for fixing this problem was to spray some GX2 over it, sand it, and polish it. And I removed most of the all-clad chrome, but not enough of it. And I should have known better because, as everyone should know, paint does not stick well to aluminum. And that's all this all-clad chrome is it's just a lacquer with very fine aluminum pigments in it. And sure enough, my overspray did not stick. And when I started sanding it, it just basically began to tear up like Vallejo or something. So anyways, there are times when you just have to recognize that the best thing to do is just get medieval and, get in there and do what has to be done. So I got my pen sander out and some water and just worked all that down to the bare plastic. Made myself a nice large area that I can blend in, and so I'm about to spray some GX2 on that and do what I was originally going to do in the first place. So, once upon a time, way back in the day, a good friend of mine told me that I am the most tenacious person he's ever known. Yeah, he may be right. Anyway, if this looks like a disaster area, that's because it kind of is. This morning, I was full of piss and vinegar, thought I knew exactly what I needed to do, and I did. I just expected it to go better than it did. As I mentioned before, my first attempt at filling in my little problem with a new layer of GX2 did not go well. And so I sanded everything down and got it all cleaned up, and then laid down a really nice layer of GX2, nice and thick. Totally covered over the little witnesses that I was trying to deal with on this seam line, and it was all great until I started trying to sand it all down and blend it in, because around the edges of where I had sprayed, it just wouldn't feather. It looked like it did until you zoomed in really close. And then what I found was that I was still getting the little hard edges like I have here on the bottom, where it looked perfectly smooth until you really focused on it. And I knew from what I learned from the bottom that those were going to show, and that just wasn't going to work. So I didn't have much choice. I made the decision to sand it down again, and this time take it all the way out to the panel lines so that I had a natural break. And so that's what I've done. Sanded it and polished it, and I'm not going all the way to the panel lines back here because the shape is really complicated, and doing that's just, I'd have to go all the way down the side and clear down to here probably, which I could do if I had to. But I think I'm going to be okay. I'm going to just let it ride right here and try and hide whatever flaws show up. And, just hope for the best. Hope that by the time I get done with clear coating and weathering, that whatever issues are there are not super visible. So anyway, hope I'm making the right decision. I do have to say this. One great decision that I have made was buying this little Proxxon pin sander. This thing, man, I tell you what, it eats through paint like a bionic termite. It's amazing. And it's actually more controllable than doing it by hand. I actually did all of the sanding on this fuselage and worked along the lines there without any protective tape or anything. Obviously, I sanded outside the lines in a couple of places, but I was still able to control it pretty well and make pretty fast work of it, using plenty of water. And even though it's 600 grit paper, it left a finish that was plenty smooth enough to polish directly from there. So I'm really pleased with that purchase. I am loving me some power tools right now. Okay, dude bros. So decisions were made, experiments were conducted late last night, and this morning things are looking much better. What I decided to do was, rather than dick around with repainting the base coat in that panel area that I sanded down 3,700 times, I decided to go on bare plastic. But I wanted to make sure that the chrome was not any more fragile than it already is. So I got some Hasegawa plastic out of the spares box and shot some of it directly on there. And it's really, you can see it's about the same. It'll rub off If you do it, if you rub it enough, it's going to come off. So it is what it is. But one thing I find that more interesting about this little experiment is this piece on the left, I polished the plastic. This piece I did not. And I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but there is a distinct difference in the reflectivity of the two pieces, minus, of course, my giant fingerprint. So that just goes to show you how much, the surface prep matters if you're going to use one of these all-clad, high-shine paints. And it's why, this is annoying to me, but, people will post pictures of plastic spoons and say, oh, look, this is perfect chrome. And, yeah, I kind of hate the plastic spoon thing because a plastic spoon is far shinier and more perfect in surface finish than any surface of any of your models is ever going to be. The reality is that the molds for those things are diamond polished to the very highest possible degree for tool steel. And that's an expensive process, but the people who make plastic spoons don't care because they are literally going to shoot tens of millions of parts out of those tools. So that's not something that even somebody like Tamiya is going to undertake. But anyway, I believe that it was a good decision because, as I will now show you, the little F86 is back in business. And, hopefully you can see my fuselage repair is successful. This stupid seam line ghost that I had, it's not really a ghost, it was just a place that I straight up missed when I was sanding and polishing. But anyway, it's fixed. And everything is happy once again. And you can see that that's a pretty nice reflective surface there. And even the areas that I was afraid were going to look like ass because of the, trying to blend that paint in, the base coat, don't really look too bad. It's plausible. I got a couple of places where I purposefully allowed a scratch or a little bit of a defect to be there because that's just kind of how I do. That's part of my weathering process of building in these random imperfections like that. So I'm pleased. I also took the opportunity to do a thorough inspection since I was going to have to respray the entire thing and take care of all those little nits and flecks and little, just stupid little things like that were, gonna have to be fixed anyway. So I'm a day late, but definitely not feeling $1 short. I also decided to do a little bit of work on this rear section. I've seen some pictures that suggest that section is at a minimum a different type of aluminum, maybe even stainless steel. I don't know, but it's kind of hot. That's where the tailpipe passes through there. And so I decided to use some all-clad stainless steel, which is another one of their high shine finishes, and just work in some tonal variation that gives the suggestion of some structure under there and some random heat splotching that I think looks pretty cool and pretty realistic. So hopefully that will all translate to the finished product. So now I am going to go away and breathe for a little bit and just relax. And then it will be time to get after this thing with the masking tape and the lint roller and do that part of the process. And then I will, and then I'll do the stencils, and then I will shoot some aqua gloss on it. I have decided to go ahead with the stenciling directly on the paint. I don't think I showed this, but my experiment was semi-successful. You can see where the microsol did damage the chrome paint a little bit, but it kind of came back when I shot the aqua gloss on it. So, maybe that's not so bad. Either way, it's pretty easy to control it and keep it only on the decal, and that worked. But as you can see, even with aqua gloss on top of it, because I shot some on here last night, you can still see the edge of the carrier film. So what I may end up doing, I don't know. We'll see how bad it is. I think I just have to accept that it's going to be there no matter what. And if I'm offended enough by it, then I may spot sand and clear coat, some of those individual areas. We'll see. It just depends on how much it bothers me. So anyway, that's what's next. So I am in the grind of stencils. And it is a grind. There's no doubt about it. This little pile here is maybe a third of all of them, because I've already done the whole other side of the aircraft. And I don't know. Things are going about as well as I expected to. I'm doing what I can to minimize the carrier film, and I'll show you that in a second. But these are just freshly applied, so you can kind of see. The carrier film is visible, to one degree or another, no matter what. Kind of depends on the angle that you're looking at. So, yeah, it's a bummer. I hate it, but it kind of is what it is. Get really close, and you can see that there. You can also see what I'm trying to do is, if the carrier film is really obnoxious, like see where that text goes longer on the bottom line than on the top line. What they're doing on most of those is just making a rectangle of carrier film. And that rectangle up in the upper right hand corner there shows a lot. So what I'm doing is I'm trimming that off, and I will show you how I do that. It's not rocket science, but there's a little bit of technique to it, I suppose. So I've got, let's see, I think this number 128 is a pretty good example. I will try and get this to a camera angle where I can show you this without doing my usual business of banging into the camera with my arm or my optivisor or whatever. Heck, I can't even get the decal that I'm talking about to be in the frame. All right, I'm gonna have to get the camera up higher and then zoom in more to even stand a chance at this working. Okay, I had to just sort of stop and futz with the camera there for a second because I couldn't get it to focus and couldn't get the decal that I wanted to talk about into the frame. So anyway, here goes. So what I'm going to do is try and show you this. So this is where a scalpel is a really awesome tool, because see the way that blade is curved? That enables me to very easily just set it down right where I want to knock off the corner of the carrier film, and then just rotate it, and just like that, chop, I've now scored through that carrier film. Now the thing that makes this a lot easier is if you get next to the idea that you don't have to cut all the way through the paper and then end up with a tiny little, square or whatever of decal paper. All you have to do is score through the film itself for you to be able to remove it. And you'll see that here in a second. So I'm going to finish cutting this off and getting it the way I want it, and then I'll show you how I actually go about applying this silly little thing. Okay, so this one was really kind of a pain in the ass because I had to cut it on like 5 or 6 sides to get most of that film removed. But it looks pretty good now. I don't think you'll be able to really see on camera the difference. I don't think the camera's gonna focus on it that close, so you may not be able to tell, but you'll just have to take my word for it. This is one of those things that I can see really good in my Optivisor, and the camera, yeah, absolutely will not focus on. We'll try it this way. The camera absolutely will not focus on. It seems to work better when I've got it in wide angle mode, so maybe that'll do it. Anyway, maybe you can see there where I've chopped that film around the edges. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get to actually sticking it on the silly little model airplane. So, again, if you guys have watched my stuff, you know that I don't get too heated up, literally, about using warm water and all that. I've got my same old year-old jar of decal water, and I've got a little puddle of it right here on the bench. And for these little stencils, all I do is just go and stick the decal right there in my little puddle. And especially with these Cartograph decals, they just come off the paper really fast. They only have to stay in there for a few seconds before they're ready. So not a big deal at all. Okay, now I got to figure out where this number 128 goes. This gets to one of my major complaints with these decals, and I'll talk about that here in a second. Crap. Okay, I'm a little discombobulated here. I should have looked more closely at where I was going to put this decal before I decided this was a good one to demonstrate. Just my usual bad camera work. But anyway, this one is going to go in the middle of this access panel right here. Now, what I've done is I've skewered the decal paper with the point of a hobby knife. And I grab that with my left hand. And then I've got something else, like another hobby knife or a pair of tweezers or whatever. And then that way I can just go over there and just slide it right off of the paper. Works pretty easily. Sometimes I will just straight up grab them with a pair of tweezers and take them off the paper and just lay them down. Now, what you might be able to see there is that there's a little puddle of that decal is just floating there on a little bubble of water, and that can make it difficult to get it into position. So you need to get rid of some of that water, and a Q-tip just very slightly introduced there does that. It sucks out most of the water, but leaves a little film of it underneath the decal that allows it to still slide around. So now I can move it wherever I need to get it into position. So now the decal is in the right spot. And now comes what I consider to be a really important step. I go back to my Q-tip, which is damp so that the decal won't stick to it. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that the decal is firmly stuck in place and that there's no air underneath it that could make it look silvered. So I'm going to take the tip of my Q-tip and I'm just going to press down on it, but just press down. Try not to slide around because you can still move it. And I'm actually applying a little bit of force there. I'm not trying to just dab the water away. I'm actually trying to press on that decal and make sure that the air comes out from under it. And I think that's really important. I do that on all my decals, no matter what size they are, to just, to make sure that I don't have air underneath there. And I think that definitely goes a long way to making sure that I don't have any issues down the road. So anyway, now that the decal is applied, I've got these back here that are ready to go. I might as well put some microsol on them. And I'm using microsol because I know that with these decals that I don't need something as strong as Solvacet, especially since I'm working directly on this chrome paint and it is so fragile. So what I'm going to do is I use a small brush with a small amount of the solution on it, and I'm going to just apply it right on the decal itself. Not smear it all over the place. It doesn't take a lot. And again, these are going under the clear coat, and they're really good decals, so I don't have to worry too much about them being, really well stuck to this thing. So this is almost a little bit overkill. In fact, I'm not going to use any setting solution on the decals back here because I found out the hard way yesterday that with this stainless steel that I used on the top of this area, that the setting solution just really screwed it up, and I had to make a repair. So anyway, only ever use as much setting solution as you absolutely have to. It doesn't take much, and you can use a really tiny brush to apply it only in the specific area that you need. So that's my basic method of how I put these little stencils on. It's work, there's no denying that. It's kind of funny. I got into a discussion with somebody this morning on the internet about this method or that method of doing decals, and his contention was, well, if I gloss before I do the decals, then it'll be less work because they'll slide around easier and they'll stick down easier and and that's fine. That's great. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to do the same amount of work to put my decals on no matter what, whether there's a gloss layer there or not. I'm going to approach my decals the same way every time. I'm going to baby them, and I'm going to do all of the things that you're seeing no matter what. So for me, it doesn't really matter. If I don't need a gloss coat, I'm not going to use a gloss coat because that in and of itself is extra work if it's not necessary. So anyway, you guys know, I think from watching my videos, I'm not afraid of hard work. It is what it is. What I do get annoyed by, though, is this thing with stencils. Let me rearrange the camera so that you can take a look at this stencil instruction sheet here. I'm sorry, my camera work this morning is just terrible, even worse than normal. Okay, this is just dumb as shit, and I would like to register my complaint officially with the complaint department at Edward for this. I don't understand, first of all, why we can't just start, let's say, at the tail and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like clockwise or counterclockwise, and number all the damn decals in a sequential order that matches what's on the decal sheet. Look, I get that they're trying to save space and save money. I don't care. I'll pay a little extra if I need to for a larger decal sheet, because it's super annoying to try and cut all these things out and not be able to do it in any kind of a sequential order. And then you have this little pile that you have to go through to figure out which decal you need next. And it's, just becomes an organizational miniature nightmare. What would be great is if all of these little stencils were printed on the sheet, so that if you started with one at the tail and worked your way sequentially clockwise, that they were like in a nice little strip where it was like 1, 2, 3, or whatever. So then you cut out this strip and then you just snip off each one as you're working through it, and you come to the one that you need. That way, if you're only doing half of the job today, you don't have to cut off all of the decals. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing something, and I'm just I'm braying about nothing here. I don't know, but it sure seems to me that there's a better way to lay out these decals on these sheets so that it's less of a pain in the ass, and it would be awesome if they could figure it out. Anyway, end of rant. This is decaling. I'm going to keep working. See you later. So yeah, remember how I said that it appeared that the all-clad chrome sprayed directly on plastic was just about as durable as if it were sprayed on a base coat? Yeah, it's not. As you can see, casualties started mounting as soon as I started masking. I was masking off for this side panel, and I had a piece of tape that was peeled directly off the back of my hand and barely stuck to that surface. And it lifted some of the paint and the clear coat right off of that. I mean, wasn't even a discussion. So anyway, it is what it is. Got to fix it. So this is proof of a couple of things. First of all, that Post-it notes are one of the greatest inventions ever. And second, that doesn't matter if your clear coat is good if there is no bond between the paint that's under the clear coat and the substrate that's underneath that. The clear coat's not going to help you much, if at all. So, but having said that, I now have to go back and re-clear coat all of this because, obviously that chrome paint that I just sprayed on there is next to worthless. So what I am going to do is clear coat the entire thing again because it's hard to spray just one patch of clear coat and have it blend in. So really going to end up doing the whole thing, and that probably is not the most terrible thing to happen because this clear coat is really thin, which I did very consciously, thinking that I just absolutely had to be super, super careful. And there you go. See that? That is a decal that was right there in the middle of that round access panel that just got popped off by my Post-it note. So this thing is just going to be a tiptoe through the cactus patch from here on out, apparently. So, progress. Where am I at? Well, as you can see, I have repaired the glitch that I had here. I believe that's the last the last place I was. I don't remember. There's just been too much trauma. I'm blocking the memories. But anyway, this part is fixed. Resprayed with some chrome. I wanted to reintroduce some of the blotches, but the tape trick was just too extreme right there where the paint wasn't sticking. So I actually just used some Vallejo metal color on a sponge, and that worked pretty well. And then I put the fan tip back on the TH and got after things with some more aqua gloss. And sorry, I'll explain that in a second. Anyway, laid down a couple of pretty dense layers of the juice, and got a pretty nice shine. I'm actually pretty impressed with the fan tip on the TH for things like this, because I can get a much nicer gloss with that and aqua gloss than I can using a regular tip, which only makes sense given that it's a broad pattern. So the only problem with that is that now I have a gloss over areas that need to be flat or satin, but I didn't have any choice. I'll just have to correct that with some local spraying of dull coat or some half and half. And I'm going to do that on this tail section right here anyway, because I want a duller sheen on that part. As you can see, I've dulled down I've masked and painted the gun panels. I used the MRP Duralumin for that. That seems to be a pretty decent representation of stainless steel, and I used that on the very tip of the tail as well. And I have done all my panel line washes here, black in the removable panels, and the same Vallejo blue-gray everywhere else, and so that's all gone fairly well. This is a good point to talk about something that came up in SMCG this morning, I think, and that goes back to the idea of a clear coat changing the sheen of one of these aluminum surfaces. And I've been pretty guilty of my own self-induced dogma on that score about not wanting to do a clear coat because it will change the sheen and it just doesn't look natural to me anymore. And I still hold to that, but obviously in this particular case I just didn't have any choice. And what it really comes down to is how noticeable is it. But this is a good place to show how the sheen is affected in ways that might make a difference to you. When you take a look at this surface right here, for example, okay, that is a nice gloss. All right, you can see that is pretty smooth, pretty bueno, and that doesn't look out of place over here where I've got a reflective surface anyway. But here where I don't have a reflective surface, or as much of a reflective surface, not so much. But here's a place where it really kind of shows you that it doesn't make sense. This section right here was sanded down with some really fine sandpaper. And so you can see it's got that pattern of micro scratches in it, even though it still has some reflectivity. But when you look at it from an angle, you can see that it also has a very nice smooth gloss. And that's really incongruous with what's going on there. And I may dull that section down a little bit just to make it match. It's not offensive. And again, I don't think it's going to show up in photographs. And I've been pleased that the effect has not been as annoying to me as I expected it to be. So, that's good. But there is no doubt that a gloss is going to change the sheen of an aluminum surface. It just really comes down to whether or not it's enough that it's noticeable and if it matters to you. So anyway, on to the next fun bit. Before I forget, I should say, all of my efforts to hide the carrier film on these stencils turned out okay. I mean, it's not great, but it's about as I don't know how I could have done any better. I even trimmed out just this red circle so that there's no carrier film in the middle of it. But it got me thinking, what if, and this may seem like a totally insane idea since we all want less carrier film, but what if for these stencils where, they are so often found on these little access panels and hatches, what if the carrier film was actually bigger? So big, in fact, that it went all the way to the edge of the little panel or the little door. Then that way you wouldn't have to worry about the edge of it showing around the text, because it would basically, the edge would be right there at the panel line joint. Now some people will say, well, but what about silvering? Well, look, silvering shouldn't be a problem. You should be able to not have any silvering if you are painting and decaling correctly. So I would much rather have to worry about that, since I know that I can solve it, than I would have to worry about those little edges showing. Now, in a situation like that, where the text is out there in the middle of the panel, no joy there. My solution doesn't help. So it is kind of what it is on those, because I don't think we want to cover this entire panel with carrier film. But speaking of decals, I have, as you can see, moved on to decaling the fin and the nose, and things are going pretty well. These decals are really good. They're super thin and they're laying down quite well. Now, they didn't just completely conform as deeply as I wanted them to into those panel lines and rivets. So what I did, and that was with the micro set. So what I did is I came back with a small brush, you can see it right there, and just very carefully applied a little bit of the hammer in those areas that I wanted to bed down more tightly. And and that went perfectly well. I mean, you could just almost see it happening right before your very eyes, where that decal just sunk right down into that joint there by the rudder. So this is good. Things also went pretty well with the nose, and I have not applied any solvaset to the nose yet. I have one little thing I have to take care of that I'll show you here in a second. There are a couple of issues with these stripe decals, one of which I had read about, and that was that this fin flash decal does not match perfectly in the center of the fin. And it may not. It's going to be a pretty close call. I've got it folded around there as best I can, and we'll see what happens. One thing I did to make that easier is, after I did the initial application of microsol, this portion that hangs out over the edge of the fin was still hanging out in space. So what I did, and I expected that because it needs a relief cut right here. So I made a relief cut here and a relief cut here, and then applied the solvaset, and it just magically folded down over that leading edge, and looks pretty bueno. Now, here's the other problem that I had not read about, and this is just silly. Somebody was not drinking enough coffee or smoking way too much crack the day that they designed these decals, because, yeah, they just seem to totally forget about the fact that there's supposed to be a forward set of gear doors right there, and just completely, left that hanging out in space. And there is no decal for said gear door, which is this little thing right here. So what I'm going to attempt to do, as you can see, it's just hanging out there, and I'm not going to put any solvaset on it anywhere until I deal with this. I'm going to use a really sharp blade and attempt to just cut that portion loose and transfer it to this little gear door piece. So that will be an adventure. Wish me luck. So you can see that part of the situation went pretty well. You can see I do have a split in the, or a gap in the between the two decals. They just were a little short, but that's okay because I can easily fix that with a little bit of white paint. Unfortunately, things did not go as well on the other part, the little door. I mean, it's not terrible and it's underneath, so nobody's going to see it, but the damn thing moved on me after I had Solvaset on it. And yeah, couldn't move it back. So it's misaligned with that edge. But yeah, anyway, it's on the bottom and it'll be a little filthier down there. So, you know, whatever, it is what it is. I'm just pleased that I was able to resolve it even that well, given how silly the situation is. Now, in the last little clip, I was blowing on the thing, and I was going to tell you why, and I forgot. See that right there? Yeah, that's what Solvaset can do to all-clad chrome or high-shine paints, even if there's aqua gloss on top of them, if there's enough there. I had a little bit of a drip there that I didn't see until it was too late, and I was trying to blow it dry. But yeah, anyway, just, you know, the number 300 thing I've had to fix on this stupid project. Okay, so I am carrying on with the decaling, starting on the horizontal stabilizers. I've got those painted over with a coating of microsol and let that do its thing for a while. And I'm just putting that directly on the plastic. I didn't see any point in doing any other kind of prep work on those. You can see the fin flashes, I think, look pretty good overall. I'm pretty happy with it. They're, you know, everything is nice and snuggled down. But I do, in fact, have a little bit of a gap in part of that leading edge. You can see that right there. I think if Edward gave you another millimeter along that edge, you'd be happy, because as you can see, it's right on the margin back there at the trailing edge. So, but you know, I plan to have a few leading edge chips here and there on this paint anyway, so no big deal. It's all good. So after this, I'm going to be at a little bit of a standstill because, and I don't think I had really made this clear, I made the decision a while back to get some custom masks made for all of the USAF lettering. And I think that the reason why is pretty obvious. I mean, you can see, I think you can see anyway, the massive amounts of carrier film. Maybe you can't see it, I don't know. But this USAF is basically one giant rectangle of carrier film. And for all the reasons that we've seen so far, that's not going to fly. So, custom masks. Now, I am obviously terrified of that, given all of the problems that I've had with my masks already ripping paint off. So, that's going to be a very dicey affair when I do that, but it is what it is. I'm just going to, you know, just approach with great caution. Hope everything goes well. And once those lettering sections are masked and painted, then I'll be able to finish up with the large insignia decals and the blue stripe. And, you know, do a little bit of dull coating here and there. And then at that point, hopefully the fuselage will be ready to assemble to the wing. And I will be able to move on. In the meantime, while I wait for those masks to show up, I will be working on landing gear and the photo etch assembly that goes back here on the rear deck of the cockpit. So, there you go. You can see. I have met the enemy, and it's me. I think you can see that I am, in fact, my own biggest problem when it comes to my scale modeling work. I'm just obsessive and compulsive and way too much of a perfection seeker, and I get myself into a lot of trouble as a result. A good example that I didn't even talk about is, this is embarrassing, it's just so bad. Right here on this panel right here, that's this off color of aluminum, before I sprayed that area, I was taking a look at it and I decided that there was a little bit too much texture on just that little silver sub panel. I don't know if you can see it, if the camera will focus there. It's kind of around there on the top. Anyway, so I very carefully, I thought, sanded it. Sprayed the mixture of anodized aluminum and silver. And of course I had, wouldn't you know it, edge marks from my sanding. I mean, you just can't blend this stuff very well with sandpaper, and even the slightest little edge shows. So came back, more sandpaper, sanded it again, resprayed it, still not good enough. Didn't even hardly let the paint dry before I sanded it off. I think I did it a total of, I don't know, 4 times, because I kept having a blemish in one particular part of it, right down here, and it's fixed. But if you look close enough, you can definitely still see the blemish. So, yeah, I have a lot of self-inflicted gunshot wounds at my workbench. But hey, you know, as I've said before, that just gives me lots of practice at fixing things, and you know, that improves my overall confidence in my skills. And maybe that's in and of itself sort of a bad thing, because the more confidence I have, the more stupid things I do, and the more chances I take. So anyway, the existential angst of the model maker on a Saturday afternoon. So anyway, as you can see, though, I am actually making progress, and even though it's the 18th of March, I am starting to think that there may be a chance that I will actually finish this thing by the 31st. So anyway, we'll see. Keep up with all the drama. If you have so far, I totally appreciate it. As always, much love, guys. Take care.